Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual May Sew Fun program. I'm Donna.
And I'm Charlotte. Welcome.
We are brought to you by Quality Sewing and Vacuum in the Pacific Northwest. We have 11 stores in the Puget Sound area, and our educational teams visit these stores once a month for 11 months out of the year and put on this Sew Fun program for you in person. So if you get a chance to come to one of our stores for Sew Fun, we would love to see your smiling faces in the audience. The products shown today will be on our website, and the price discount for a Sew Fun member will be good until June 5th. You can choose to pick up your order from the store or have it shipped. Orders over $100 will ship for free. We have two gifts that we'll be drawing for, and you can be in the running for those gifts if you like, share, or comment on this Facebook page. You'll be entered for one of those drawing prizes, and the names will be drawn on Tuesday, June 1st. We will notify you on Facebook if you are the winner. So, Charlotte and I are going to go ahead and start with our notions today. We'd like to go through all the notions, tools, and gifts first, and then if we use them in any of our products, we'll tell you about them more in depth.
So am I doing that?
Go ahead.
Oh, let's see. What am I doing here? Oh, let's do these are grip dots by Gypsy Girl, the Gypsy Girl. She's coming out with a lot of products that are absolutely fantastic. These are silicone dots that you can put on your rulers. You can put them on your rulers that you're going to use on your long arm or on your domestic machine. You could use them when you're cutting things, but also there's these little dots. They're just like a donut, and there's a little tiny dot in the center that is going to cut out, and you can use those little tiny dots on your smaller rulers. So you actually, instead of having 24 dots, you end up with, 48. And these are they're a silicone pad, and they work great. When I use rulers on either my long arm or my domestic, I will always use a pair of gloves also, because that way you don't have to hold the ruler as tight. And with these grips, it's going to hold them really, really well. You do the iron?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the iron rest. This is also by the Gypsy Quilter, and it's an iron rest. The reason I love these is because I have several. Beside my sewing machine, I will have one. I can either have it on a 12 by 12 tile, so it doesn't get my table hot at all. But these little irons that we use, these are perfect for the side. We sell these. We brought them in before, and I'm sure many of you have them, but they don't like to stand up. And so I know if I can put this pad down and put this iron on here, I'm not going to burn anything, and it's not going to fall over. It's going to be stable right there. And also the little clover irons that we use, the little tiny ones, they have those little stands that are metal and they don't work very well. You can also lay that right here, and just be sure that, because I use these beside my sewing machine, be very, very careful that you don't throw some fabric or something on top of the iron, because it will burn. And how do I know that? Because I've done it. And also, if you're going to use it on your ironing board, I have some on my ironing board also. I have a Laura Star iron, and it always sits always sits flat. And so I'm used to just moving it from here to here. And if I use another iron, I make sure I have an iron rest on my ironing board, because I'm in the habit of putting my iron flat down, and that will burn and it'll scorch your ironing board. Okay, so, these pliers are really great. We've used a lot of hemostats, and this is basically what they are. They have a very, 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 very fine point on them. And the cool thing about these, I like the rubber around the thumb holes and the finger holes. But one of the things that I really like about them is that when we do freestanding lace, usually, they have the little buttonholes. If you're putting together a project, they have the buttonhole and then they have the button. And what I do to make those become a button is that I will take a small Pyrex dish with a little bit of water in it and a paintbrush, and I will dab the buttonhole with a little bit of water, and then I can put my pliers right in there, and then I will put a little bit on my button, and I can smash it down, pull that through without tearing off my buttonhole or my button. Now, if you're giving it away, I would highly recommend, or you can do it for yourself, once you pull that through, is take a little bit of glue, fabric glue, and that's going to dry clear, and put it on immediately. Because if you give it to someone of your friends and they decide that one of these came apart and they're trying to put it back together, chances are they're going to pull the buttonhole apart or they're going to pull the button off. So these are our little pliers. We have several of those for you. And marking pens are extremely important, but one of the most important things I could say about this is a fine line by Dritz, and it's blue. I highly recommend whenever you're going to use a marker on anything, whatever fabric it is or however it's been treated, whether you have used Best Press, if it's been washed, laundered, exactly the way you're going to use it in your project. Try your pen out first. Make sure that it is going to come off. This one, I'm sure, is a water erasable. A little thing about water erasables, I have found over the years, been marking a quilt, when I'm using my long arm, I use a blue one, and I have these blue marks. I use Warm and Natural in my quilts. Now I've taken them off with water and they look really good. I come to Sew Fun and I look up at my quilt and I can see that blue dot again. It's not that I didn't take it off. What happens is that it's actually into the batting and you need to do it again. So just use a little bit more water and take it out again because it's actually pulled down into the batting. Okay. Oh, these are my favorite, well, one of my favorite pairs of tweezers. I have two. I learned about these years ago from Cindy Losekamp, taking an embroidery class with her. Carrie, can you get that pretty close? They have a flat side to them and a very sharp point. Okay, so this flat point, this flat part, she was doing embroidery, and we sell those little tiny stitch erasers, which are just wall clippers that men use for their sideburns. Well, we use those to erase stitches. What we can do also is if you've done an embroidery that you have made a mistake on and you want to take care of it, you turn your fabric, you turn your project over, lay it flat on the table. Do not put it in your hand. This has to be flat because the teeth of the little razor goes back and forth like this, and this part out here is flat. But you could take that tweezer and that wall, and you can just go right down that wall trimmer, and you can cut off all those stitches. And then what she told us is take these tweezers, and because they're flat, turn your project over and then just start pulling your stitches right out. And if you have one that happens to stick, one of the stitches, these points are so good, it's almost like having a seam ripper. You can pull it out real easy. They're great, but they're also good for your chin whiskers, so I have several pairs.
Okay, my turn. This month we have 2 different color packs of tulip fabric markers. There is the rainbow and the neon colors. And coming up is a project that we use these in. They're called coloring bag zipper pouches, and you'll see examples of these colors shortly. This is a great additional fun project item that you can do with your grandkids. I did an embroidery when I was in California, stitched it out, and let my almost 4-year-old grandson color with these pens, and he thought that was so cool. Actually, he was expecting to be mentioned this morning. So, hi, Lincoln. Anyway, one of the things that I do with this is when I'm stitching in the ditch, which typically I don't do as perfectly as I would like. Sometimes I pull up onto the curb and then back into the ditch. If you're working on a color that maybe is contained in this package, I just go in with that color and color those couple stitches that kind of jump out at you that have not stayed in the ditch. And then that covers up any imperfections that you use. But we're going to talk about these in a little bit when we talk about our zipper coloring books. Swedish tracing paper This is 29 inches by 10 yards, and this is a strong fiber that you use to trace a pattern. Many of your patterns today come with multiple sizes, and you need to trace out the size that fits you. Now, if you're unsure of what size you are, you can trace this and run a basting stitch up the side seam, or maybe you want to readjust the shoulder. Try this pattern tissue on and see if it fits. And if you're satisfied, then take the basting out and cut your good fabric out with it. If it doesn't fit, then you either trim it down or you get the Scotch tape out to expand it. I take leftovers of the Swedish tracing paper and use it to trace letters or maybe applique shapes. I don't have an automatic cutting tool, so this is what I do a lot of tracing on. So 29 inches by 10 yards, and it's really strong, and you can put it on and see how it flows and how long it is, and it makes your sewing pattern a lot better. Colorful eco pouches, if you're not into making a bag on your machine, it totally in the hoop. We have these by Erica Capro. She's the designer of these quilt designs. Birds of a Feather and House in the Middle. These are 100% recycled water bottles. Great for taking to a retreat or even packing in your luggage if you had maybe something damp that you wanted to put in here. They're strong and they're wipeable to clean out. And maybe you've noticed behind us, we do have some Kaffe Fassett quilts today. If you are a Kaffe Fassett book collector or fabric collector, then you know how sensational his fabrics are. If you're new to him, then we have brought you a couple of puzzles, 1,000-piece puzzles. They finish out at 29.5 by almost 20 inches. This is Kaffe Fassett's diamond quilt, and we do have a few of the fabulous florals quilt. So if you are a puzzle lover, these would be great to do. And then finally, we have a new product that just came out from one of our wholesalers. It's called Scrap Tape. And it is a water-soluble stabilizer that helps you do scrappy quilting or perhaps straight line construction if you're doing a border out of scraps. And I have a demo that I'm going to show you later on how well this works. So, Charlotte, your zipper bag.
Zipper bag. So we have Suki Sews zipper bag, and this is the sewing machine. Is that a good one? Okay. So this is an embroidery, and it's going to, when you get this, you're going to feel like there's nothing in here, but there is. There's a piece of paper in here, and in this piece of paper, you are not getting a CD and you are not getting a thumb drive, but you're getting a piece of paper that you're going to go on to her website, which is www.sukisews.com, and you tell them that you have purchased this zipper, the coloring bag, the coloring book zipper bag by the machine. And when you do that, it will come up and it'll tell you to put this number that is on this card. And as soon as you put that number in, all of the designs, I think there's, I forget how many, about 5 or 6 formats that you're going to be able to use. There are 3 different sizes in each one. I made 2 sizes. Donna, did you make the
I didn't make the small.
Neither one of us made the small, so we made a medium and the large. And this is completely done in the hoop. And one of the things that is important about this, when you're doing it in the hoop, one of the first things you're going to put on in is your zipper. Now, I have found that the best way to put a zipper in, that you're going to run your sewing machine across. I have different embroidery machines, and so the feet are different. And where that sewing line is going to go down, I put a piece of tape. You can put the pink tape by Floriani, or we have paper tape by, I think, Gypsy Girl. We have a lot of different tapes that we have, but put a piece of tape over that so that when your foot gets to that, it doesn't get hung up. I highly recommend that when you're making anything like this in the hoop, do not leave your sewing machine. You need to watch it and babysit, because chances are the minute that you leave, something goes wrong. And even when you're there, when something goes wrong, you can't find that stop start button fast enough because it just disappeared off the front. And I learned years ago, I know it works with a couple machines. I don't do it so much now because I can do it with my foot, but they would have us put our foot pedal on the table when we were doing these things so that when something happened, we could hit that foot pedal and it would stop before it did any damage. Because it could, if you get this caught, if you get it caught, your machine may have come out of timing. You probably broke a needle, and it might have to go to the doctor. So just be really careful and stay there with it. Also, I did everything on this bag that they told me to do. I lined the fabric. Let's see. Yeah, we ironed the fabric with an interfacing on each piece. I didn't put the pocket on. There was a pocket in the back that Donna did, but I wanted my fabric to show, and I didn't want an open pocket because I know if I'm going to use this, it'll all fall out. So I chose not to, and if I did a pocket in there, I would put some Velcro across there and make it stick. But when I had this all sewn, and I went to turn it right side out, I could barely do it. It was too thick. So on the next one that I made, all I interfaced was the front part that I was going to color. And the coloring is, all you're going to do is you're going to end up embroidering black. That's all it's going to do. And then you're going to come back and you're going to fill it in with your colors. These colors are good, will be permanent after 24 hours. I haven't tried washing it, so I don't know, but always try that and make sure. Some of them, read what the pencils say or your pens say, because the manufacturers made them one way or the other, whether they are ironed, whether they're you can wash them after 24 hours. Just do what the pattern and the things say. And the rest is just fun coloring. I just sat down and colored with a pen. I put a couple of extra little buttons on it. And I didn't have some tassels. Donna made some cute tassels, and I just had buttons, and I just cut the shank off and put them at the end here. And all of my handles were made using my bias tape maker. I love to do that. And Donna, you want to do yours?
So Charlotte was really smart in not putting that pocket on the back. You spend a lot of time deciding what fabric is going to match the coloring on that sewing machine. And I chose a fabric that reminded me of a quilt. And you see a little bit of it here, but on the back, of course, it's now covered up. All that favorite fabric doesn't even show. So, a great pattern either way, but I had never done an in the hoop zipper, and especially one that's covered. And so it works beautifully. The whole bag is completely lined. There's just a little tiny bit of whip stitching to seal the bottom off before you turn the pocket. And it works really well. The one thing that I didn't like about it, again, was not so much the interfacing, but the stabilizer. So I used probably not a very expensive stabilizer, and it's really crinkly and stiff. And Charlotte's right, it makes those corners difficult to turn. So the next one I tried without the stitching, but with a no-show mesh stabilizer, which is much softer. So this front panel and the whole bag were constructed on the no-show stabilizer in the hoop, and then the only thing you have to do to release the bag from the stabilizer is to cut, because now it's not a tearaway. But it made it softer, and it still came out the same way. See, I couldn't stop putting the pockets on. So there's no place in the pattern where you can tear that stabilizer out, because the stabilizer is there to hold the bag the whole construction process. So just be aware of that. You can do either or, but this is some no-show mesh type stabilizer that I used, and that's probably the bag itself, the piece I used for the bag. If you, I think it's a real versatile pattern because not only can you do this fun sewing machine and color it, but you can also make any number of these bags with no stitching on the front, and now you have a bag pattern with a hidden zipper. So next, we're going to move on to Fresh Wrapped, and this is a standalone tabletop runner and placemat. For my feature fabric, I chose this batik that's got 3 colors working in it, and I went out and custom chose all the fabrics for the stripes. The stripe is a challenge, I might say, when you go to do your seams. So just be aware that if you're going to do a stripe binding, that I had to tear mine out a couple of different times to line those stripes up. But it was fun and easy, and I did my own quilting. I even took this quilt pattern is this design right here. And so I just kind of let the fabric speak to me. Here are the leftovers. I had leftover blocks. So
Donna, did you use tape
for
your lines? Tape.
For my, no, I did a counting process. I stitched.
These, did you use
I
tape?
marked chalk. This is just foot
Yeah.
width. And here are the placemats. And here's that bamboo backing with my quilting. So I just used the width of my foot to judge where to quilt on these open spaces. So I have 4 placemats, and this is magic binding with a little tiny burgundy flange. It's a 2-color binding. And you can find magic binding out there on YouTube just by typing in magic binding. So there is my fresh wrapped. I think this would be a great pattern if you wanted to do this in holiday colors and make it look like a package, wrapped package. So, Charlotte.
Okay, this is my fresh wrapped, and I have a granddaughter that kind of gave me a hint that said, gee, Grandma, I have a fall table runner and I have a Christmas table runner. And I thought, oh, I guess that's a hint to make another one. And her favorite colors are orange. And I got the fabric here. All of the fabric came from here except for the turquoise. But one of the things is that this, and I always do make 6 placemats because first of all, they have 4 kids, so I have to. But if I want to give them as a gift, then that means maybe you can have more than 4 people at your place. But it looks complicated, and it's not. It is all done with strips. So this is the center strip that goes right down the center of it with the 2 little pieces on, and then you're just going to cut it to the size that you need right here. Then you have this piece that goes here, and you cut it to the size because these blue lines or her green lines are already attached to your center piece right there. And the other one is just this, oh, I guess it's the same piece. It's this. This is just a straight piece across here that made it easy. And I did quilt it on my domestic using my stippling stitch, and I did not go over any of the blue strips here. And inside each one of my placemats and my table runner, I used Pellon 987 fusible batting. It's a very thin batting, and I like it because it makes these very flat. And so if somebody puts a cup on here or a glass of milk for a child, it's flat and it's not going to wobble and come, fall over. And I've been asked, how does it wash? It washes well. Most of my kids do not press their things that I give them. I don't even know if they have an iron, but but I do press mine when they come out, and I use placemats at my home all the time. So that's the thing that and it's a fusible, and I fuse it to the front side of whatever I'm working on, and then the back side I'm just going to add a little bit of a stabilizer spray, basting spray, or I can put a little basting glue on the back and stick that down. I don't want any pins when I'm quilting, none.
Next is the book.
Oh, it's my turn, huh? Okay.
It's still your turn.
It's my turn. Okay, so the next book is Fast and Fun Quilts for Kids. This is a great book. There are 10 creative designs for kids of all ages. They are absolutely adorable. Each one of us did 2 out of this book. What really tweaked my interest was this one. And it's really simple. You just have to make sure, and I did make a mistake, and I didn't find it till I'm actually out doing So Fun, as I'm showing them how easy it was and what not to do, and I did it. And I don't have any way to go and Photoshop it. It's going to be in the quilt forever. But the block is this. This is the block. And what makes the difference is what you put on this side and this side. Now, if you notice that there's a little corner, there's a folded corner on each one of these blocks. And usually you're going to mark a line that goes right straight across. If you sew on that line, your square won't come out square. What you need to do is you're going to make a scant line. You're going to take your needle and move it to the right 1 click. And so you're not going to sew on the line. And if you do that, it'll come out to the corner just right. If you don't do that, what happens is you have the thread and you have 2 pieces of fabric that are folded over, and your corner comes out too short. So remember, you have to really think about it, because now you have this nice line there, and you're going to move it over. You're going to not sew on that line. That's the only thing that is tricky about it, and you'll like it if you do that. But the only thing that's different is these 2 blocks here, and then you're just going to turn a block this way and this way. And it was real fun to do. The next one that I did out of this was, let's see, what page is this? Anne gave me this fabric. This is, I guess you don't need to see all my things in there. And Anne gave me this fabric quite a while ago. She's another one of our, for those of you who don't know her, Anne, she's one of our other So Fun consultants. And so I had a lot of this fabric, and these are my favorite colors. And so all I picked up was, this fabric all on the inside of this quilt was picked up at our stores. And this is a grunge here, and this is just a regular cotton. And all that this is a square. This is the block right there. And when you put these 4 together here, you end up with a lot of negative space, and that negative space has to be filled. My husband said something about it before I quilted it, and he didn't say anything about it before I quilted it. And after I quilted it, and I quilted it on my long arm with King Tut, it has Warm and Natural in it. And this pattern is roses. And once I quilted it, he said, oh, now it's really, I like that, because it filled up. You have so much negative space in here, you need to fill it up. There's a book that I read years ago, and many of you may have it, and it's called Quilting Makes the Quilt. And it shows many different ways that you can quilt a quilt and how much it brings the quilt to life. That's what I did. Now it's your turn.
Okay, from the Fast and Fun Quilts for Kids, you can see that the patterns are so versatile that Charlotte has done them in very sophisticated grown-up colors, and they just turn out really well. It's not patterns for kids, it's just pick the fabric for kids. My first one is called Turtle Trot, and it was bright primary colors with 3 applique turtles across that empty white space. I decided I wanted to put an embroidery in here, and these words actually will be coming up in an embroidery that we did this month also. So it's a very sweet little saying. I had a lady in the audience tell me that her dad used to say this to her 60 plus years ago. So since I had all of this empty space, I wanted to fill it, and I chose to do it with some little hexagons. And I just whipped the corners down on this hexie around a piece of cardboard. I removed the cardboard and I put a iron-on stabilizer on the back. And then I applied them with a little bit of glue to fill in this space as if it was the tail of a kite. I've used inspiration from the Walk book, and this is what she calls shattered. And so your lines just kind of go whichever direction, but I made sure that they went through the points of all those hexes. So you can see that they're floating. They're not actually appliqued down on all 6 sides. They are open, but they're protected with this fusible. So after filling up this space, then I went ahead and followed the instructions with shades of blue. And then I thought that these 2 yellow blocks and the one at the top weren't getting enough attention, so I did some more yellow hexes and then 1 pair at the top in blue. And finally I just said, no more hexes. You could really get out of control here, but stop. There again, I wanted a little more yellow to accentuate the yellow in this border. So I did another magic binding, but this time I cut the yellow just a little bit wider. So that gave me a larger flange. And then the crazy backing fabric, I don't know where this came from, but the salvage said Sesame Street. So it was a perfect combo, right? A kid's quilt with kid fabric. The second one I did is called Entwined, and this is truly the second one I did. I did another one that was completely wrong, and we're not going to talk about that today. But I wanted to prove to myself that I could do this correctly. So in the book, you'll notice that it's put together with blocks that have a horizontal orientation. And then the border pieces are added so it looks like these chains are interlocking. And so I did actually succeed on my second try. Fortunately, I found some diagonal fabric, which cut on the straight of grain, gave me that diagonal stripe on the binding. And then I like to put in some kind of little surprise here where the borders are pieced together. And so I just have some extra little scraps. Now that brings us to the scrap tape. And I'm going to go over here to the sewing machine. And I want you to look at these various sized piano keys. And that was all done on this scrap tape. The scrap tape is 5 inches wide by 25 inches long. And I just cut a piece of it that equaled the length of this quilt and started putting scrappy pieces in. Stitch and flip, stitch and flip. And the reason you would want this, because if you were doing this freehand, these stripes might start to go off in either direction. But as long as you're using this straight edge, they stay perfectly straight. So this brings us to some ideas that you would want to do on that scrap tape. You can do string quilting, which is just improvisational long strips of fabric stitched together on that stabilizer. Scrap quilting would be just pieces of scraps that you've stitched on the stabilizer, and now you can add more to this design. This is another scrap piece done in some Kaffe fabric. And then finally, you'll see a lot of buzz out on the internet about crumb piecing. And crumbs, according to what I was listening to the other night, are anything, scraps that are anything smaller than 2 inches. Now, some of you are rolling your eyes and going, I don't want to do that. But if you are obsessed with you have favorite fabrics and you don't want to get rid of them, then here is a demo to do something similar to this. All the networks that I watched, YouTube and other sewing channels, always start with a 5-sided center. Doesn't have to be a perfect pentagon, but 5 sides are going to allow you to build this quilt out. So I've got a 1/4 inch foot and a 5-sided center, and I've laid my first piece down, and you're going to sew right to where that ends. Could you get my glasses? Thank you. There we go. Now that first piece gets flipped over, and you do not want to use an iron on this unless it's completely dry, and these work just fine while you're building these blocks. So let's go with something a little bit darker. So I'm going to go from here at this angle, and the same, I'm going to stop right there. And at this point, I'm going to trim and that's why you don't want to sew beyond those pieces of fabric, because you're going to trim them now straight. You can also do it with a ruler and a rotary cutter. And there's your second one. Take something maybe a little bit bigger, line it up on that third straight. And then this one gets trimmed. And let's do another dark one. right to the edge of that fabric. Boy, the tension on that's really tight. Trim, fold over, and just keep working your way around those 5 edges until you've covered them, and then start your second course around. And so that's how this scrap tape helps you put these pieces together, stabilizes it well for you, especially if some of your strips or scraps are on the bias. You can get a really nice crumb creation. And some people say, well, what do you do with these? Well, you can make anything from a mug rug to a whole quilt. You can make all kinds of blocks that you just put together, and you haven't wasted any of that beautiful fabric that you spent a lot of money on. So there is the scrap tape demo.
I have one more thing to add to that that might make it easier for you. Donna was using scissors over there, and she's saying you can use your rotary cutter and a ruler. One of our best rulers is add a quarter ruler like you would use when you're paper piecing. So get those out, and you'll make a exact 1/4 inch seam allowance with your rotary cutter. Don't cut the scrap tape, just cut the fabric. Okay, so Donna's going to do her garment.
Okay. The garment this month is from Liesel and Company, and it is the Geneva V-neck blouse. Now this is a blouse that I've had for a lot of years, very similar to what I'm wearing, but now it has a blue fabric marker spot on the front that won't come out, and somehow over the years it's done a lot of shrinking in the wash, so it's very tight. Don't know how that happened. So the first one I made, I started off with the measurements from the pattern, and I determined that I needed about an 18 in the shoulders. And then I gradually increased the size through the hips. Now I feel like this pattern runs a little bit small, but maybe that's my vanity speaking. So it comes with a great little pleated back and a traditional shirt tail hem. And then it has 2 sleeve options. This is the bell sleeve. And then the other sleeve is the one on this part of the pattern where it flares out and then it comes back in, kind of a little poof sleeve. I made 2 of them with the bell sleeve and 2 where I just trimmed them down, took some of that bell off, and just created this 3/4 sleeve. The second one I did, here's the bell sleeve again, and I just did some decorative stitching on the front placket and the sleeves. This is a linen. And what I decided to do, because I felt like it was too tight through the hips, is I increased this pleat in the back. And this has been packed up. Sorry, it should be freshly pressed, but I've been wearing it through all of my travels for So Fun this month. And then I made this kind of terracotta one, the tighter sleeve, and this time I stitched both the inner and outer box pleat so that it holds its shape. Now, this one is the original length. When you look at the pattern, the drawing looks like it's incredibly short, but it's really not. I, however, am taller than some, and so I always add a couple of inches to my shirts. And so this is the 3rd shirt I did. And then some lady said, but I don't really feel like putting the buttons on. And I said, well, you don't have to. Just make it into a cardigan. So this is a blue chambray or a blue Oxford cloth. There again with that wider pleat in the back. And the advantage of this pattern is Liesl and Company gives you a lower front pattern separate from the upper front. And the upper front comes in 4 cup sizes. You get A, B, C, and D. When you pick your cup size pattern piece, you tape it to the bottom, and then you cut out a right and a left front out of your fabric. And so it's not like one size fits all kind of cup sizing that some of our patterns try to do for you. It's a more custom fit. So now I have 4 shirts to replace the ones that I shrank in the wash.
Okay, so are we going to do Kay Fassett's?
Yeah.
So this is our book for Kay Fassett's, and one of the things that we were going to bring in a book, Donna, when was it? Last September.
Yes.
By him, and we could only get 5. So I had made table runners, a runner, and placemats, and I gave them away for Christmas. And so when Donna picked this book again, picked a book by him. She says, "Well, you're already ahead of the gang. You know, you have a table runner and placemats." And I said, "No, I gave them away, and I can't go get them." So I had to go get some other, make some other things. And we had bought, I think in September, we had bought some fabric for that. Oh, thank you. Look at her. These are the jazz placemats. Now, most of you who know me, you know that I do not do hand stitching unless I have to. I buy my sewing machine that does that work for me. And so we have a little country store in about 40 miles. I'm 40 miles from anywhere. They happen to carry some fabric. You can get your farm, you can get baby chicks there and everything, and you can get some fabric. And I saw this fabric, and it had circles on it, and I just loved it. And so I made 6 of these. And how I quilted them is I did a serpentine stitch. A lot of times, and Donna has done this in the past because she is very, very good at straight line quilting. She loves to use the walk book, and so she does a lot. You can use tape, and tape where you're going to do your next line. I don't. I use the guide that goes behind my foot of my sewing machine. And I did a serpentine stitch down and then a serpentine stitch. I started to do circles around it, and I didn't care for it. They did some kind of circles, and they hand stitched around the border for the binding. And all of this is done on the machine. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is I told you that I use 987 Pellon in here. It is a fusible. Fusible is glue. And in the instructions, whatever fusibles you're using, whether it's your stabilizer, whether it's interfacing, there's instructions that go with that, and it's best that you really read them. The engineers who develop the glue that goes on these products has either told you to use a dry iron or a steam iron. That they work really well if you use the instructions, and do exactly that. There are some things that say a dry iron, and if you use a steam iron on it, it won't stick. It doesn't stick well, and you have a little problem with it, and then you're going to say, well, that doesn't work. It always is good to go back and read the instructions and see if you made a mistake. I used to hate it when it came out, the new interfacing, when it was fusible, because I probably didn't read the instructions. Once I read the instructions, I love it. Now, when you have pressed this, and you've pressed the batting on the front side of your fabric, so it's upside down, walk away while it's hot, because that glue is hot and it's melted. Now, if you pick this piece up, what you're doing is you're moving the top piece and the bottom piece where they're going different ways. Now you're going to cause air bubbles, and then you're going to say, gee, this stuff doesn't work. So I've had to train myself to leave it on the ironing board and walk away and do something else, because we want to pick it up because we want to finish it, but I highly recommend that you do that. So this is the jazz placemats out of the book, and then the petite cushions. I saw this and I thought, what he did in the book is he cut apart all these pieces of fabric and they sewed it together. Well, in my fabulous little country store, they have some fabric. And I thought, oh, there's a border print. Just cut it in fours and run it across, and I didn't have to do any extra stitching. And they had the matching piece that goes with it. So my daughter-in-law will get this because she loves blue, so whichever side she wants to use, she can. In all of my pillows, and I will do a demo on this, I'm not sure when.
Next.
No, after you or me?
No.
Okay. So in all of my pillows, I put an invisible zipper right in the seam. And I'm going to show you how to do that in my demo in just a moment. But isn't that nice? It just tucks away. Nobody knows what it's there. Also, what I do is, from learning from doing upholstery work and stuff, when you get a pillow form, it's really stiff and full. And I take out some of the extra on there because if you notice anybody that is doing home or the design, they're always, karate chopping the pillow. I don't know why, but they do it. But also, I've taken the corner down. I take it down. We have a ruler. We brought it in before. If you don't know, mark it where it just goes down about an eighth of an inch down and down. And it takes off the points of your pillow. I don't know why it works, but it does. And, people have asked me, well, where do you start? And, if you're going to build a house, a man is going to cut that wood. He's going to mark that wood. So we need to learn sometimes we need to mark things. So if you don't, if you need to take your pillow when it's down and you need to mark that seam allowance, because this is going to be a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around the pillow except at the corners, mark it and then just follow that line around. Now, when I stuff my pillows, what I also do, and I learned this by doing upholstery work, is that I take a little extra of the batting that I pulled out of the pillow and I stuff it in the corners so that they don't go flat. A lot of times your pillow corners will go flat. This keeps them from doing it. But that's my thing on that. Now, the other quilt that I made this was really busy. And Donna used this fabric in a different color on her table runner down here. But we had purchased this fabric here. And I had some other of his fabrics that I didn't really care for. So what I used for my borders were Tula Pinks. And what I also did, he made a really large, I think it was 8.5 inch border out here. Well, the size of the quilt, when I saw it, I thought it was just a little too wide for the quilt. So I chose to cut it down to 6.5 inches. And I thought it worked well. And this is just some fabric that I had left over from a quilt that I had made, and I backed it. And this has Warm and Natural in it, and it's quilted on my long arm with King Tut thread. Donna, it's your turn.
No, you're doing your demo.
Oh, I'm going to do my demo. Okay. So let's go to the sewing machine and we'll do a demo. For doing an invisible zipper, I have a couple of things that I like to do. So this is going to be the front side of my zipper. And I have put Wonder Tape down this. But first of all, I have backed it with 987 Pellon, so I have a nice backing on that pillow on both the front and the back of it. Now I'm going to take some Wonder Tape, and I'm going to, washable Wonder Tape, does come on, okay, and peel the paper off. Whoops, stuck to my nail. And now what I've done is I have marked this. I've marked it where I want to start my zipper and where I want to end my zipper. This is really important. And this is where a marking pen that you want to make sure comes out, because you're marking it on the right side of your fabric. And your zipper is going to be on the right side of the fabric also. So you're going to lay the first piece down, line up your lines, your little lines here. Now, you can iron your zipper open a little bit. You can iron it, but I have this cute little foot, and I think Carrie can get that. This has a little point on it, and both Viking and Pfaff have this. This is an invisible foot. It can either be in metal or in the clear plastic. I like it in the clear plastic because I can really see where it's going. Would it be better on the dark? I don't know. Is that good? Now also, if you notice, the hole is larger than just a single hole. So that means if you need to move your needle over, either way, you have a chance to do that, so that you want to get your stitching line right along here on that zipper. And we're going to stop right here. Now, for me to get it started here, I always like to put my needle down first before I hit my go pedal. Let me put this on. And the cool thing about this little point, now Brother has their own, all of the machines have a foot that is going to do an invisible zipper. So what I like to do here is I want to start, it's real important that I start at the same place, because I want my zipper to be even on both sides, because if it's not, your pillow or what is not going to go together. I didn't want to push the wrong one here. I can't see. We'll just pull it out. Okay. So now I have this. Now the thing is, now this is the top part of my pillow. Now I need to put this together. So this is going to come over here. This is what it's always kind of, I wondered, how do I do that without twisting my head up? And I was sleeping one night and it came to me. If I just zip this zipper up, let's get that little pull. If I zip it up here, oh, got it too close. There we go. Okay, so I zip it up. So now I know that what I have to do is I have to take this off. This is my back side of my pillow. And if I lay everything to I have to lay, whoops, I got the wrong side. If I lay, oh no, I did it wrong. Did I? No, I didn't. Okay, right sides. Here we go. So I want to lay this right here so that I know, now I can open this up, because this tape has to come on this side of that zipper, of that pillow. So let's turn this over, open it up, and I know, where's my, oh, did it come off? Must be on my zipper. Okay, so now I'm going to do this. And now when I zip that up, this is going to come in and close, and it's going to close perfectly. But I had to, I used to really fight trying to figure out how to do this. And this is about the easiest way. And let's put this down. Now, if I didn't like where that needle was hitting, I could move that needle over. If I thought it was not going to close or open, I can move that needle over, because I have a big enough hole in there that it will do that. I gotta see where my scissors are. Where are they? I don't know where they are. Okay, so now all I have to do is close my zipper. And there you go. Isn't that nice? Easy, easy, easy. Then what you're going to do, because you have these, I didn't mark this, and I should have, but I'm going to have a mark across here on the wrong side. I want that mark at both ends, because when I cut the extra off of this zipper, you can sew across it if you want to after you cut it apart, if you think it's going to come out. You're going to move this back, and I use the other zipper foot, and I start stitching right where I ended and started my stitching, with a 1/2 inch all the way around my pillow. Well, mostly around my pillow. But that's the easy way to put in an invisible zipper.
Change the foot.
Mm-hmm. Which one? Okay.
Which one?
Donna, which foot?
The 1/4 inch.
Okay.
With the guide. Okay, my projects this month from the Kaffe book were called Painted Pots, and his quilts are named after the feature fabric in the center, so that is his Painted Pots fabric. That would mean my quilt would be called Coleus, because the center fabric is a yard of his Coleus fabric, I believe in green. Charlotte's quilt and mine are very similar. She just has 2 courses of fabric around the center, and mine calls for 3. So this is Millefiore, this is Kaffe Fassett shot cotton, and this is mosaic circles. Now, Charlotte's center was mosaic circles in pink. This is mosaic circles in green. And I have sent this out to my long arm quilter. And this is the 108-inch backing fabric that I found. It's the lotus, or the lily pad. And my quilter has done a repeat of circles to kind of tie in with all the other circles in the motif. Now I want to show you, don't be afraid to judge your work and change your mind. This is what it looked like after the first attempt. And I decided that that stripe did not feel right. It was too rigid, it was too modern. And I took it all off and substituted it for the mosaic circles. And then it's finished off with the plum shot cotton for the binding. So that's my Kaffe quilt. You'll notice it's directional. Be aware of directional fabrics. This will go on a daybed, so nobody's going to be walking around and looking at the leaves upside down. So the second one is called Flowery Runner, and it is on the front of the table. And it does have this embroidered, it's called embroidered flowers, but they're not embroidered. That's just the name that Kaffe has put on this design. This is a single stripe of ombre, but I have quilted where each color breaks, so it looks like it's pieced. And then you'll see that stripe that I took off of this quilt, cut down into more manageable sizes for the binding on that, and then I made 4 matching placemats. So that binding, the colors match really well, but it is much nicer in a smaller dose. And then you can see for the third time mosaic circles from Charlotte and my quilts. Now this is the one in white. And then finally, the Swedish tracing paper came in really handy because I wanted to create the pattern for the kimono style gown. And this is supposed to be a reversible robe. What they didn't include was a way to close it. So I went ahead and created a belt with belt loop carries, and I did put pockets on it. This is called ombre leaves with the same sleeve stripe and front band stripe as on the placemats. And then I have put that sateen lotus or lily pad fabric through most of it. I didn't have enough left over from the backing of this quilt, but I have it through most of the robe, and it's so yummy to try on. So that's the kimono style robe. Now we're going to do our final embroidery.
Are you going to do that now?
No, I'm going to do it at the end.
Oh, at the end. Okay.
So,
So we're doing tuck me in?
yes.
Okay, tuck. Oh, that's you first, or is it me? Who's going to do?
No, go ahead.
Okay, Tuck Me In is an embroidery by Janine Babbage. I love her designs. her designs are really, they embroider well. All of her writing is digitized well. This is a embroidery plus an applique. So this is a CD in here, and so it's going to have all of your designs that you need in formats. And also, she's really explicit in her teaching. So if you do not, in her instructions, if you do not have a large enough hoop for your sewing machine, you know that we'll sell you a machine that will. But if you don't, she has instructions, and they're very well written for if you have a 5x7 and you can get all this wording in that you want. Now, what I did here, this is exactly made to the size that she asked to do. I normally will put a bigger V at the bottom of my my panels, but she used this one, so I used it about this size. But I want you to make notice of this scallop around here. All of this scallop was done with the King Star metallic thread with a 90-14 needle. Now, our Inspira needles now are called Kaffe needles. They are not specific to Kaffe, so just know that they'll work in all of our machines. They're the exact same things that our Inspira was. They just changed the names. I did all of the stitching without having one thread break with that. Did not slow down the machine, did not, if you haven't tried it, King Star it has many colors, and it's absolutely beautiful. I also put the 987, I fused that to the front side of this, and I only stippled inside the stitching or the wording. And I also then just made a pink pillow that now I know somebody saw it immediately and said, oh, I want that for my granddaughter. And this is exactly the same size, but like I say, there's instructions in there that are going to tell you how to do it in a 5x7 hoop. And I've done one that was really long, and I had to multiple hoop because you don't have a hoop that's this long, and it comes out perfect. So don't be afraid of that. I did not use the metallic up here, but I did use a metallic thread here that did not break also. But I also used an invisible zipper in it, which wasn't as dark as it should have been. But that's what when you live 40 miles from anywhere, that's what you get. And anyway, this is, I did the same thing as pull out a little bit of the stuffing, and then I take the extra stuffing and I stuff in the corners, and I actually did the corners down. But that's what I did with Tuck Me In. I mean, I love it. It's just great. And the same is just, you don't need that. Wonderful.
So my Tuck Me In border, at this point in sewing, I was done following the instructions, and I just did what I wanted. My point at the bottom is deeper, and I made the borders wider because this background fabric is so bold, and I didn't want to slice those daisies to the point that you couldn't recognize them anymore. So this is mine with the little fabric appliques put in there, and a magic binding application, which I just finished across the top and then turned over, because I will put this on a little rod to hang it. And then, of course, you remember that I did the same stitch out of the saying up here, and that I just rehooped twice and was lucky enough that I got it on the first try. I don't have any software to digitize that. And then finally, the pillow I did does not have the fabric appliques. It has the marking pens. So the pillow, the book, and the moon face are all done by the fabric markers. And since this was the first project I did, I didn't realize that the bear was supposed to stitch out in brown thread. So I left his face bare, and I ended up with a panda. Luckily, sort of a panda. Just some raspberry polka dot borders, and then a traditional quilt binding. And I probably use that trim down method also on the corners. I've got the template and you just trim just a little bit off each corner so that you don't get these rabbit ears sticking out. And then finally, I have a bold and gold zipper right down the back that is visible. I'm leaving the invisible zippers up to Charlotte. I do want to talk a little bit about this back of the pillow. So we've all done the June Taylor's quilt as you go, flip and quilt projects. Your batting is marked in the blue ink and you stitch and flip according to her numbered sequence, and then you get the project that she's designed. But you can design your own stitch and flip. And that's what I did on these two halves of the whole back. I have 2.5-inch squares, and I decided on this project to do 4 across, and I did make sure that they cascaded down in the right order. So I'm going to do another demo that will show you exactly how to put that back together. And I need my glasses again. You can see through my travels through all the stores this month, I have got a pretty substantial piece already finished. But this is the 5-block strip that I created ahead of time. And I've got those ready to stitch on. Here's the next one. And at one point I had them all numbered so that I kept that color sequence cascading down. So here is my last strip, and I've pressed these seam allowances in opposite directions. So every row it's opposite so that these will nest together. And I've hit the mark on several places. Some I'm a little off, but that's because I removed the pins. I don't like to remove the pins ahead of time. So here is my first block, 1/4 inch foot, and I'm just going to stitch down here. Now I've moved my pins out of the way. They're still there, but my needle isn't going to go over them. You do have to slow down when you get to that seam so you don't flip it backwards. And this is where a stiletto would work really well instead of my fingers. There, that's working good. You remove the pins, and then you finger press that open, and Carrie can focus on the one that's most perfect right there. The others not quite so much, but that's the way you can do your own stitch and flip pattern and just make it up as you go. So I will have a nice big section to do whatever with eventually. So over to Charlotte. I think we're done.
I think we're done. We want to thank you for joining us today. And now how do we do those prizes now? Do we remember?
The prizes will be drawn on June
Okay.
1st.
June the 1st. Okay, those prizes, we have 2 of them that will be going out. And I think you need to
Like, comment, and share.
by comment and share, and your name gets pulled, and they will notify you? Mm-hmm. Okay. And all of the products that we have, they will be on sale until June the 5th, I believe. And so please, make sure if you want to get one of those products that we showed you today, be sure and get it before June the 5th. And also, we want to just thank you for coming and sharing it with you, and we'll have another one of these next month.